Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Kabir Singh, and this is Against the Grain. As a disclaimer on today's episode, we're going to be once again covering some heavy topics, and that includes gender identity, suicidality, body image, and other mental health topics. So if you are struggling, viewer discretion is advised. Also, know that this is not meant to be political in any way. Rather, shed light on the reality of what's being pushed out there these days and highlight the importance of finding that inner sense of self-worth rather than depending on the external world. But before I get into that, like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit that notification bell. You know the drill. Let's get down to it. Now, this sort of is a continuation of a previous episode where I talked about how social media basically panders to those who lack the personal sense of accountability. Well, to corroborate that, I have with me a study by the Center for Countering Digital Hate. This is a nonprofit organization that works with big tech to fight misinformation on social media. Some of their mission includes, but is not limited to, anti-vax beliefs, climate change misinformation, and anti-LGBT rhetoric. Now, they conducted a study by setting up dummy accounts on TikTok, posing as 13-year-olds, and they would intentionally search out mental health-related content, including body dysmorphia, for example. And the results were disturbing. In just 2.6 minutes, these people's TikTok user feeds were bombarded with suggestions related to suicidal ideations. Within 8 minutes, eating disorder, and within just 39 seconds, body image. And this highlights just how predatory social media has become when it comes to brainwashing you into believing that there's something wrong with you. And rather than being encouraging for you to find that sense of inner peace, they convince you need something from the external world to fill those voids. Such is the case with Ash Eskridge, a biological female who claims TikTok brainwashed me into becoming transgender, and now I'm detransitioning. And for a little bit of a background, when she was around age 12, she became very depressed, as a lot of young people go through these days with the state of the world. And she leaned onto social media to escape her reality, which only heightened during the pandemic. With everybody being home more and glued to their phones, it's only natural that you would be on social media more. Now, I think it's important to mention a study from the UCLA that states that between 2017 and 2022, the number of underage people who have gone through the transitioning process has nearly doubled, from 150,000 to nearly 300,000 people in the United States, in the same course of time that many influencers on TikTok have gained notoriety.
Something's fucky.
Now, how is this relevant to Ash Eskridge? Because she said, I saw videos of influencers saying how transitioning saved their life, and I wanted it to save mine. Now, her parents did question her on this. They said, we did push back. We told her we'd accept her for who she was, but that we didn't feel this was the correct path for her. At the end of the day, though, they did allow her to go through the transition surgery, and she changed her name to Grayson. This was when she was around age 13. However, when she turned 16, roughly, she started to regret the decision. She said, rather than feeling affirmed, it felt unnatural. She was uncomfortable with her male voice and her body hair. She missed being a girl, and so she decided to detransition. And since then, her and her family have become advocates for better mental health treatments and for the age to be 18 to receive gender-affirming care. Now, this came with its own set of challenges because when she decided to use her TikTok to advocate for representation of those who have detransitioned, she received backlash, a lot of backlash, such as this comment. It's not really important for detransitioners to have representation. Sure, you need support, but you are cis. Why do you need representation?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
I mean, it's comments like this which prove her point. Because God forbid that your experience contradicts the narrative that transitioning will be always rainbows and sunshine.
Sue me.
If you talk about the pitfalls of it, you come across as transphobic. People think that somehow by validating and giving a platform to somebody who wants to talk about the downsides of transitioning, it somehow invalidates the experience of somebody who, for example, truly does have gender dysphoria or would truly be happier identifying as the gender that contradicts what they are biologically. This isn't a zero-sum game. One experience doesn't invalidate the other. Now, we know social media is toxic for many reasons, but this, I think, highlights the hive mind mentality that it perpetuates onto young, impressionable kids. We know our formative years are tough enough as they are. We don't always have the tools to be well adapted to this world, and it is during this time that the adults in our life, or the role models for that matter, should be giving us those. Now, I just want to show you a clip of her TikTok. Run it.
Hello, as some of you might know, my name is Ash and I am a detransitioner. I recently made a little video on this topic, not really explaining much of it, and got quite a bit of backlash in my comment sections. And some of you guys, you're gonna hate me for this, but I need to speak the truth. Growing up, I didn't really show any signs of gender dysphoria. I was perfectly happy with my body and being a girl, and of course I was uncomfortable with, like, puberty and stuff, but that was for other reasons. Every girl is uncomfortable with their changing body. And when I was 13, I started to struggle a lot with depression, anxiety, that sort of stuff. Now, at the time, there were a million videos of all these trans people coming out. And because I was so unhappy with myself and who I was, I thought that that might be what was wrong with me, and I convinced myself that that's what was wrong with me and that's what would fix me. When I first transitioned, I really didn't have any issues with my body, but as I went on, I realized that I needed to fit into this box if I wanted to be a male, and because of how my body did not fit into that box, I became increasingly more uncomfortable with it. But it wasn't gender dysphoria, it was me trying to fit myself into a box that I simply didn't fit into. In a way, I sort of brainwashed myself into thinking that I had gender dysphoria. And naturally, this brought me into a really bad place mentally, where I started struggling with drugs, self-harm, suicidal ideation, all that stuff. And I assumed this was because I wasn't male enough, but it was really because I wasn't a male at all. The thing that I think is absolutely wild is that I went to one appointment before I was given my prescription. One. You might be thinking, oh, well, they probably asked you a ton of questions. Nope. They barely asked me anything. I basically walked in there and was like, I'm trans, and they were like, okay. They didn't question me. They didn't sit down with me and question and talk, like, is this really what's right for you? They were just like, okay, this is the next step in your transition. We'll give it to you. After about 2 years of living as a male, I realized I was wrong. But I didn't come out about that right away. I stayed living as male for another year before I really finally decided that I needed to do this. And it was one of the most scary things that I ever did. I've faced so much backlash. I've found it that people are so quick to accept trans people, but so quick to criticize detransitioners. Once I detransitioned, all my mental problems were gone. I'm happy. That was my issue. The fact that I'd convinced myself that I was a dude.
A lot to unpack here. I mean, first of all, that she's apologizing in advance for who she might piss off for telling her truth. That's beyond me. Second of all, and this is possibly the most angering, is the fact that the doctors just let her go through with it after one consultation without asking those probing questions to figure out if that's really for her. Now, maybe they didn't do that because they didn't want to come across as transphobic, as we see in today's environment. But it's really their job at the end of the day, just as they would help a patient that's physically in pain or has an ailment. They should really be helping her get to the root of her internal anguish. But I guess the silver lining here is you can see it in the video that she's clearly aware enough to understand that she wasn't happy from within. As she said, she was trying to fit into a box that she didn't fit into. And once she detransitioned, all her mental problems went away. Now, she does talk about some permanent damage that resulted in her from her transitioning, namely some bottom growth in her genitals, a permanently low voice, body hair that she has to shave off, all because the adults and the role models in her life did not question her hard enough to understand if she really needs to transition. And I do sympathize with their parents to an extent. I mean, you really want to help your baby who's clearly in pain and you don't always know how to. At the end of the day, though, I think that what they really needed to be doing is working with her to help find her sense of inner fulfillment, whether that be through counseling, therapy, or working with her to discover her talents and using that to her advantage. And I'm not implying that the road to self-discovery and happiness is easy by any means. We're all going to face heartache along the way. But when we can take ownership of ourselves, we'll be more likely to want to make positive changes in our lives and be our best authentic selves. Now, as I stated at the beginning of the video, the purpose of this was not to push any political agenda, rather highlight how social media takes advantage of those who do not have an internal locus of control, and it brainwashes you. And when it comes to transitioning, if you're a consenting adult, it's your choice. Just make sure that what you're doing is not because social media convinced you to do so. Because as we saw, in the same course of time that TikTok influencers blew up, we saw a surge in young teen transgenders. Also, please use Ash Eskridge's experience as a reminder of some of the permanent potential ramifications if you decide to make decisions like this. Now, as I've stated before, I'm not a mental health professional, but I am here for you if you need. I've posted some links to mental health resources in the description. And for the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure that you like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, I'm your host, Kabir Singh, and this is Against the Grain. Good night.